Okay, let's start with answering some questions some people had. Again, my son Jube has come to help me, and we're in limited space, so I'm going to show you guys how things might look for some of this. One of them was when you're doing modified lunges, right? So, give me an on guard, Jeff. When you're doing a modified lunge, and we're talking about having to get that, step, right? We're talking about that cross step to modify for a lunge, because coming into this position is not good for you for insert reasons, right? Just hold your sword up. I'm sorry, we're limited room again. So if you're going to make one of those lunges, right, you can do this from a bind, or you can do this if you anticipate a parry. That's one of the things we were talking about. Now, obviously, if you get them in that solid bind and you just advance in, you can have a good thrust. If they come into a parry, we were talking about having that oblique angle that you take. And I brought the buckler just to show you how this makes it safer, right? So if I'm coming in with that initial thrust to my opponent's center mass, right? And my opponent takes a parry 4 to prevent the angle, right? So he comes in at that 4, and I make my step in, and then adjust. So I'm always going to just across his sword. So if, on guard, I throw at his strong side, and he binds it in a good 6 on his arm, right? When I cross forward, I'm going to come across his blade. Here, Jebs, stand right here so they can see it real quick. Facing the camera. Step next, I think. Sword up. So once again, we're trying to get that angle, right? If I make the lunge for here and he comes to 4, right? I'm going to want to come to the outside of his blade. And again, you can see how it's much safer to do with a buckler. So I bring this here, as I step in, I'm able to close off that line. I'm able to gain his blade better. If I don't have that, if I'm fighting him single and I'm making that one, and I come in, when I step here to begin that angle, I have a moment where I might eat sword, right? So, bearing that in mind, leave at the edge. If I make that initial thrust to 4 and he goes there, I'm going to have to change this into a wall of steel type move, where we did the gain earlier. So if I come here and I know I can bait him to come to that crossbody block, I'm going to take my true edge, step wide of the mark to clear it. That's a dangerous one because you're closing on your opponent. But if you're having to work with a improvised lunge, I'm just showing you where you'd want to angle and how you'd want to move and why, right? It's a concept thing. Remember these concepts. They're not hard rules. They're just trying to use these concepts to make your style work. Let's see. All right, so which angle would you come in on is always over their blade, not, you don't want to try going around their blade for this situation. There are other times when you would. So what else we got? And I kind of addressed this already. Jeb's getting your own guard. Can you begin the modified lunge with an advance? And again, especially if you're getting that initial bind, stepping into range and then crossing forward, it's very easy to do. So adding that advance can easily put you in a good spot. Just remember, if you're doing this, keep your feet in a good balanced stance. Even if you can't come to this, more intense fighting position, if you're stuck here, you still want to be able to, Jebs, hold your sword up and just hold it straight up. Okay? You still want to be able to come into fight, come out from the fight. You still want to have this forward, backward, easy movement so I can always transition. So remember that about your footwork. So if you're making that simple advance in, right? I'm here, I make my advance in, I want to be able to advance out as well. You want to be able to change, I'm taking about a heel to toe step. You want to be able to change that to a wider than heel to toe, broader than heel to toe, just by rotating off your ankle a little bit. Consistency is good, but knowing how to break your consistency for your opponent, because they're going to get used to your consistency, right? Being able to change that up will be a game changer. That's how a disengage works, right? We make that consistent. I'm coming here, and then when they go for that parry, you're coming here, yeah, you're coming here, And then when you make that same move that you've been making, that concept of the disengage is what makes it work, because you're consistent enough that when you change your consistency, your opponent can't react properly. Or they've already reacted properly to your consistent move. Demi lunge cross step. So, can you make a demi lunge into a cross step? Now again, you can do anything, but what would be the advantage or disadvantage of trying this? On guard. So if I make that demi lunge, and I don't know if you can see, I'm going to show you the footwork right here, that demi lunge, that little half lunge, right? Not going deep. If I make that demi lunge, now can I make it into a cross step to finish it out? You can. Is it slower? It'll always be slower than a full lunge. That's why I emphasize building a full lunge. Getting that full lunge of extend lunge is the fastest one you're going to get, generally speaking, right? So if you know you're working with a slower lunge, you might want to think about how you're going to have to change stuff to make that work. If we get that good, he's coming here, I make my demi lunge, right? Guarding against the most likely counter spot, and then doing my disengage with my cross footwork allows me to get close. It's not going to get you a solid one shot most likely, but you don't have to win fights that way. You have to get past your opponent's blade. So when you're using any of these moves, remember that you are engaging your opponent's sword first, so you can kill your opponent second. 3 outcomes in a fight. 2 of them you die, right? So bear that in mind when you're doing that. Okay, last one. Good catch. I'm going to drop the buckler for this one because you don't need to see it. Jebs, take a high guard. So Jebs is in it. Bad footwork, good high guard, like I need him to be from our distance we're in, right? Advantages of a high guard. I'm threatened, and I have to deal with this sword to get to my opponent. That makes me wary of him. That's an initial response. Disadvantages of a high guard. How far away is he? I've got a pretty good idea because I can literally see his sword, right? If I'm going to fight him from here, I know how far away he is. I know how I'm going to have to fight him from this distance. Got it? Yeah. Oh, and he's all initially in a good high guard. Let me align you a little. I see your arm getting a little tired. We all work out more, kid. Relax right there. There you go. Right there. Now, if he's in a good high guard like he is right now, and I'm going to hold it, you're getting good muscle, like that, right? If he's in a good high guard, his arm is hidden behind his sword. So my quickest shot at his closest target, the arm, is always going to miss. Advantage, right? He's threatening, he's guarding, he has those advantages. Disadvantages, he's giving me his blade, so if I want to hit his blade, he's giving me his range. I can see how far away or how close we are to each other by length of his sword, right? Low guard, Jebs. Now look, he's got an excellent low guard right on line with his knee, right? His mechanics, pommel, elbow, tip are in a straight line. This is his, bend your elbow. This is his high guard, pointed low. Advantages of a low guard. He has thrown off my ability to guess his range. Now his blade's angle change has ruined my perception of distance, right? So I don't get that easy, I know how far away he is. Engaging his blade. Engaging his blade low can be a challenge because it's very easy for him to pull his arm slightly back and throw that shot high. Boom, coming around, easy engagements. On guard, low guard. Trying to bind him out doesn't actually shut the door for coming around. It has advantages of it's hard to fight the blade first. And remember, that's a good fighting concept. If I can get rid of his blade, I can engage him, right? Low guard makes it hard to engage the blade. That's part of the idea. You can still get fast shots by aligning tip, throwing shot, right? So it has those advantages. Disadvantage is it does leave your hand more open. You can learn to fight, in all these stances, you can learn to fight with these disadvantages. Nothing's perfect, right? You have to be extra aware of your head. You have to be extra aware of your distance, because in order for this sword to get this high, he needs enough time to get it there, right? So fast headshot is going to require understanding a distance, understanding a timing, and getting your blade where it needs to be, right? So you have those kind of disadvantages from a low guard. Now, we're going to go mid guard. And this is a common one you'll see people fight from. Now, as I mentioned before, you can learn to fight with all the disadvantages of any style and make it work for you if you're willing. But you have to understand what they are and why they are disadvantages, right? So here's, yeah, shake it out, kid. Here's a disadvantage of fighting in a mid guard. It's not high guard, it's not low guard, it's this weird mid guard, right? And everyone does this from time to time. I'm telling you, if you do this, it had better be on purpose. You'd better be doing it intentionally. Don't do this because you're trying to think of doing something. That's going to throw it off. Disadvantages of mid guard. How far away is he? I know. Can I engage his blade as easy as a high guard? I know. Does he have his arm initially guarded? No. So he's got the disadvantages of a low guard and the disadvantages of a high guard. And he's got very few advantages from it. So fighting from this guard right here, not my recommendation. You don't end up threatening your opponent enough. You're giving them range and blade, and you're not improving anything necessarily about your ability to either engage their sword or strike them that is going to show over other guards, right? So mid-guard kind of gives up more than it gets. That's why I don't recommend a mid-guard. This particular one, you might have a different idea of like a mid-guard, like here. Like high guard, maybe this is your mid-guard, that's your low guard. I'm saying this one right here. This cross between. Not a recommended one for me. All right? So that's those are the questions I had. Thank you, Jubs. Appreciate you. What are you doing?
I'm gonna sit in this chair.
Oh, you'll break it. The poor thing. It's made of glue and styrofoam, and you're a big boy.
Good chair.
Yeah. All right. Couple lunges because we're behind. Right. I've had a bit of a week, and I didn't get all the videos up I wanted, so we're gonna do a little extra today and stretch out tomorrow. Right. Okay. Again, because we're still focusing on buckler. Let's. Oh, and there's a buckler thing I wanted to mention while we're here. Because I had talked about these two being synergistic, independent weapons, right? And I want to emphasize how this is seen in rapier over things like arming blades, one-handed chopping swords, right? An important thing you can do with your buckler in rapier that I would not recommend as much in arming blade, because when I tried I got hit in the hand a lot, is throwing shots and then using the buckler to engage independently. Or when a shot comes in, blocking said shot and throwing a counter shot with a good thrust. When you're fighting cutting swords, arming blades, which tend to be shorter, right, and have less handguard, I have found it has more advantage of when they come in, you either cut towards their blade and double down with your buckler, trying to close in and use your buckler to smash their weapons out of the way, or using your buckler to get the initial block and counter cutting with your sword towards normally their arm, because in order to cut, you expose your arm, right? With a rapier, this thing is heavily guarded, and it is harder, generally, to make that stick. When you cut at their hand, rapiers tend to have this nice guard around it, makes it harder to hit. And I don't get hit in the hand, my sword hand, very often when I'm fighting with a buckler. But when you're fighting with an arming blade, if you take the buckler away from your sword hand, it tends to get hit more. So again, focusing on rapier buckler work. Emphasis, got it? If I have my buckler out, my sword ready, and my opponent throws a shot that I can block with my buckler, right? Getting that initial block, it is very easy to then throw the counter shot. If they throw that shot up high and I'm able to block. Now you'll notice I twist my buckler for the high shot. Remember I told you can hide behind a buckler, right? Lining your blade up behind it where they can't see. If I take my buckler and someone throws a high shot and I go like this, I'm blind. If they figure that out about me, they throw one high shot, hesitate, throw a low shot anywhere else, right? And my buckler blinds me long enough that I lose half a second. Right? Kill you 3 times in half a second. So when I block a high shot with my buckler, has that rotation, right? Or that rotation. Or, right, I'm not going to leave it as a static wall in front of my eyes. That's an important, buckler concept. Okay. So, First off, we'll talk about gaining a shot with a buckler, throwing a counter shot. What do we do when we block? Step back, right? Core concept. So that doesn't change when we're using a secondary. That doesn't change when we're using a secondary. Can I modify that because I've figured my opponent out? Yes, okay? These are guidelines. These are foundations. They're not unbreakable rules, right? If I have discovered that my opponent is always throwing the same shot and it's so consistent, it's kind of a problem for them, I can step in to gain with my buckler and throw the shot. I don't have to step back. But I'm telling you right now, good sword theory, right? Something that's going to be consistent on all fighters. Not the one you're fighting right now, who you figured out, but every fighter you're going to meet. You want that step back. So the shot comes in, and we're going to do a simple crossbody. Now, you can like angle your buckler, but see mine has these ridges. Ridges catch swords pretty good, and I like that. So I will turn my ridges in, bringing my umbo, this part that sticks out the front, right? If you have a circular one, you have a boss. If you have a like tent one, like I have, you have an umbo. When that shot comes in, putting my buckler in line with that blade shot, getting as much of a barrier as I can, throwing my counter extension. This can be made a lunge, but it doesn't have to be, right? Just like we did with the parry riposte. This is the same drill, but we're adding a secondary. So they come in at my arm, I get that initial parry 6, counter shot, right? They come in center mass, I get that initial parry, counter shot. They come in at my face, parry, counter shot. They come in at my leg, parry, counter shot. Same concept, but now we're going to add a crossover. And I don't mean crossover with your legs. I mean using my secondary to replace my sword as my initial parrying device. So if they make that arm shot, because you don't want, remember, consistency is good. Too much consistency is a pattern. You don't want to have a pattern. So if they throw that arm shot, instead of blocking with my buckler as I have been, I make my modified 6, stepping back. I'm going to still make my counter thrust, but I want to make my buckler engage their blade. So I'm going to transition the two between. Getting that initial parry, bam, transitioning. Now this one I'm going to try to catch on the face of my buckler as I counter extend, right? So again, making that 6, getting that boom, boom, boom. And ideally you want to make that as close to one motion as possible, so goes through it slow, right? They make that shot, you get the 6, you transition over, you make the counter thrust. They make that leg shot, you get the 7, you transition down as you come up with that counter shot. They make that 5, you get the parry, you transition as you come in for the counter shot, as you come in for the counter shot, as you change legs to get that counter shot. 5 could be different because you've got the blade you've got to try to transverse around. You don't want to make it super slow, right? That's my slowest one. Parry 4. Right now, parry 4 is not going to happen a lot with a buckler, but if people are messing with your buckler, they're throwing those shots at it, trying to get you to react, and you've been like moving the buckler, you can mess back with them if they throw that shot, and you actually engage it with your sword into a parry 4. So they throw that shot at your hand because they're trying to provoke your buckler into movement, and you remove the buckler, come to a good 4, and if you caught them here, boom, boom, right? Okay, rapier buckler concept. Rapier buckler concept. And just to keep up with our drill, because again, missed a few, I want to do a few more. We're going to do a couple lunges for fun, and then we'll switch it up. On guard. Get a good on guard. Angle, extend, lunge, parry, recover. Angle, extend, lunge, parry, recover. Good? Let's put it together. On guard, lunge, boom, parry, recover. On guard, lunge, boom, parry, recover. On guard, lunge, boom, parry, recover. All right. Just a few, just keeping up with the idea, making sure we maintain that mindset. Oh, last one. Jeb's gone, but I want to talk about it. because you got the idea now. If you make that initial modified lunge, where you're coming in with, say, an advance, and then you're stepping wide, or stepping's too hard for you, so you're coming in with that initial step, and then you're crossing over to get that lunge, right? When you're backing out from here, where is your opponent's blade, right? You don't end here, right? You thrust, guard, and notice I step back with it. So I remove myself from my opponent and continue. Ooh. Also, if you have the room, you're going to want to have that initial coming in, step to try to gain, crossover, extend, parry, and I'm going to walk it out. So I keep that distance retreating, so it makes it harder for my opponent. All right. That's what I got for today. Keeping up with it, right? Keep doing it. Leave a comment in the video if you've got any questions. Otherwise, we'll stretch out tomorrow.